Well guys, it looks like we are at the end of the red-tail boa spotlight. And of course, just like any of the other animal spotlight weeks, we are going to be wrapping this up with the care guide. Today we are going to be going over everything you're going to need to know about taking care of your red-tail boa. With all that being said, I guess there's nothing else left to say than, what was it? Oh, roll the... So just like all of the other care guides, we are going to be going over the 5 main categories that you need to know, and that of course is going to be enclosure size, heating and lighting, humidity, the diet, and then what to fill the enclosure with. So with that stuff being said, let's get into it. What enclosure size do you need for a red-tail boa? So when we're talking about enclosure size, it really depends on what age your red-tail boa is. Now when we're talking about something just a hatchling red-tail baby boa, something you just picked up from the expo or from a breeder of your choice, you're gonna wanna get away with something such as a 20-gallon enclosure. 20 gallon is sufficient for a hatchling red-tail boa, usually since they only stem to about 20 inches long. However, red-tail boas do seem to grow quite frequently in that span of being, you know, the just born to a year and a half, so at this point you're going to be needing quite a few upgrades before you get to that large enclosure. Usually around the 6-month age of a red-tailed boa, they're usually going to be able to outgrow that 20-gallon enclosure, in which case I would recommend upgrading to something like a 4-foot by 2-foot by 2-foot, something like this where a red-tailed boa can pretty much thrive for the next year to year and a half. At that point, the red-tailed boa should be getting anywhere from 5 to 6 feet, of course, at that point outgrowing that 4-foot by 2-foot, in which you will need to upgrade the enclosure. Personally for me, I have Viv, my red-tailed boa, in a 6-foot by 3-foot by 18-inch enclosure. However, this actually isn't her permanent enclosure. Right now she's sitting at about 4 or 5 years old and just starting to outgrow this one, in which case I will be upgrading her to something like an 8x4 as her permanent adult enclosure. But moving on from enclosure size, let's get into the next category, which of course is going to be number 2, heating and lighting. Starting out, let's get into heating. Now, red-tailed boas, of course, like a warm tropical environment. With that being said, you're going to want an ambient side on the hot side being into the high 80s with a basking temperature around 90 to 95 degrees. Now, there are a couple of different ways you can go about heating the red-tailed boa's enclosure, anywhere from using ceramic heat emitters, basking bulbs, radiant heat panels, or even heat tape. Just one thing to mention, if you are using radiant heat panels or heat tape, make sure you are plugging those into a thermostat so you're getting a regular heat regulated so something doesn't go wrong and something does not happen to your boa. Personally for me, because I'm using a custom enclosure from AP Cages, it's a little tricky to actually use a basking bulb just because of the fact that the boa can easily potentially touch the bulb, and that's never good for the animal. With that being said, I am using a heat tape plugged into a thermostat. With that, it's a little bit more tricky to get the ambient temperature of those high 80s on that basking side. How I do this is I use a rather large hide, so if the animal does want to get heated, it can go into that hide where it also gets the basking spot and the regulated ambient temps. Now with boas, they grow pretty frequently, so I just couldn't justify spending, you know, the $40 to $50 on a large, you know, I guess aesthetically pleasing hide, you would say. For me, I am using a kitty litter tray that I just cut the front off of. So, you know, it doesn't look good, but it does get the job done. Wrapping up heating, of course, you're going to be wanting that temperature gradient, so of course it stays hotter on one side and cooler on the other side. Whoa, we just figured out what temperature gradient was, if you didn't know. Pretty much for the cool side of the boa, you're going to want that around the high 70s area. So it's going to go from high 70s, getting warmer, whoa, now it's in the high 80s. That's heating for red-tailed boas. And then going into lighting, I don't do too much for my boa. Pretty much I just have a few LED bulbs, then an LED strip, something I get off, you know, like the standard aquarium LED bulbs, just to provide some additional lighting in there and just make everything look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. Of course, with red-tailed boas, while it is not necessary to have a UVB bulb, you can, for certain, just give them some UVB bulb. If you do, just make sure you have it in a spot. Again, it's a little bit more tricky if you're having a custom enclosure, such as something like AP Cages, just because the fact that you would have to mount that on the inside where the boa can throw some shenanigans at you and mess with the bulb. So maybe not use UVB for this one, but if you do, make sure that it's secured and in a place where red-tailed boa or where your boa cannot get to it. Then moving on, let's get into category number 3, which is going to be humidity for your red-tailed boa. Now, as far as humidity goes, you're going to want a gradient of somewhere between 40 to 60% in the enclosure. I always find with these animals that need that moderate humidity a bit more tricky than it goes with just high humidity species. Usually with those kinds, you can just pretty much water it extra, seal off some ventilation, you're good to go, you'll get that spike in humidity. However, with boas and other animals that need this moderate humidity, it gets a little bit more tricky. You're gonna want the perfect sweet spot between missing the enclosure to get that spike, but then making sure you have enough ventilation to make sure it gradually goes down into that perfect range of course, 40 to 60%. That being said, the two things I recommend, of course, getting a nice substrate mix in there. Personally for myself, I'm using a topsoil sand mixture, and then I just mist every couple of days. Pretty much I just make sure, see if you enclosure humidity, of course, having your humidity gauge, it'll be a lot easier for you to know what the percentage of the humidity is. At that point, it's easy as, oh, if it's getting too low, just give it a little mist, it'll spike right back up. That's pretty much how easy. If you want to learn more, I have a humidity video, but I am not going to dwell too much onto it. We are going to move on to the next category. And getting down to it, going into the last two categories we have for today is going to be number 4, the diet. Now this one's gonna be pretty easy just because the red-tailed boa diet is pretty self-explanatory. Of course, rodents. Oh my gosh, what? Rodents? Just like literally almost every other snake we keep in captivity. Yeah, you're pretty much just gonna wanna feed them rodents. Two things to note is just make sure you're feeding on a proper schedule and making sure you're using appropriately sized prey. Nothing too big, nothing too small. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna dwell too much into this topic just because of the fact that I will be making a red-tailed boa feeding guide and a schedule, so just, you know, when to use it. Pretty much everything we're gonna be going over, actually make a separate video on, so I'm not gonna explain too much. I'm so sorry. Keep a lookout for that video if that's what you're interested in. I'm so sorry if you're watching this right when it comes out because I have not made the video within the 12 hours I've been filming this and uploading it. I'm so sorry. But hey, maybe come back another time. Maybe hit that subscribe button so you get notified when that video comes out. That'd be pretty cool. Pretty good stuff. Let's get to the last category. So, you have pretty much all the care basics down. You know what the proper enclosure size is for your red-tailed boa, the proper heating and lighting elements you're gonna need, what humidity levels you're gonna need in the enclosure, and then diet, kind of. I'm so sorry if you came here for the diet. That was not really the main focus of this video. However, there is one thing that you don't know yet. Of course, that is going to be topic number 5, the last category we're gonna be going over. Number 5, what to fill the enclosure with. Let's dive into it. Now, I guess you could be one of those boring keepers, you know, just give it some paper, butcher's paper for substrate, hide in a water dish and call it a day. I mean, I guess that's what you could do, you know, no shame in that. However, if you're just a pet keeper, you're just keeping these things as a pet, why not go all out? Let's get extravagant with this design, people. Let's go all out and give it just some cool stuff. But what is that cool stuff? I'll tell you right after this clip ends. There will be a clip where I tell you about it. It's happening right now. Personally, for me, I give my red-tailed boa quite a few things to get some mental stimulation in there. A couple things you can do is, number 1, of course, a solid substrate. Like I said earlier, in order to get those appropriate humidity levels, I am giving a substrate mix of topsoil and sand. Some other things I do is just some large logs I found outside while scavenging. I have those so, you know, she can just do this with them. She just crawls around them, slithers around them. Other than that, honestly, I guess there's not too much into it, so I guess this isn't the most extravagant enclosure in the world. I do have a large water dish. You may be asking yourself what that water dish is, Dakota. Well, I'll tell you, viewer, it is another kitty litter tray. I have 2 kitty litter trays in there. One is a hide, one is a water dish. You can't get anything for these things that get this big, so I'm like, fuck it. Everyone gets kitty litter dishes, because apparently they're the perfect size for large animals. And that's something that I think is really cool for mental enrichment. Of course, getting some leaf litter. I've used to use leaf litter a lot. Of course, I don't have any in there just because it's not leaf litter season. The leaves are just now falling. So soon she'll have some leaf litter, but for right now, she doesn't. They seem to enjoy slithering around in there, slithering under, burying themselves in the leaf litter. It's a good time for the snake, and hell, it's free. It's literally free. They grow on trees, people. Leaf litter, it grows on trees, so hey, why not pick some leaf litter and give your boa a good old time. There you have it, folks. everything you're gonna be needing in the 5 main categories for how to take care of your red-tailed boa. How do you think I did on this list? Do you think it was good? Do you think we did a good job here on this care video? Or do you think it was really bad? Are you like, Dakota, you didn't dive into anything? This was literally the worst video I've ever seen. I am never subscribing to you, ever. Let me know in the comment section right down there. And you know, I won't know. Maybe it's a good video, maybe it's trash. I won't know until you let me know. You know? Alright, I guess it's the part where I do my outro. Of course, huge shout out to Zen Habitats. If you are unfamiliar with Zen Habitats, they are an after reptile enclosure maker. Make some immaculate designs such as this one right here. Oh my god, look at this. This is an incredible enclosure. Wow, Dakota, I wish there was some way where I could see some more Zen Habitats enclosure and possibly purchasing them. Well, viewer, you came to the right place because it's right down there. Literally right down there in the description. You can find out all about their stuff. Really cool stuff. They have really cool designs, and they actually include shipping in their total, so you don't get bum rushed with a, you know, $100, $200 shipping charge. It's all one price, one click, one buy, one go, one send, one enclosure. Unless you buy more than one enclosure, then you get how many enclosures that you bought. That's how buying enclosures work. And as always, if you like the video, please feel free to give us a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of my animals or my breeding products, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, DBCB Exotics. We're also on TikTok. We're so close. We're so close to that 10K, people. Please follow me on TikTok. I'm like 300 followers away from 10,000. I want to hit it. Help me out. Help your boy out. I'd appreciate it. Other than that, of course, we have some rad t-shirt designs like those right there. You can find those at teespring.com right down there in the description. We also have Patreon. Patreon.com/DBCB Exotic. You get up-to-date info on all the breeding projects happening at DBCB Exotics. If you're new here and you just happen to find me from this care video, hi, I'm Dakota. I breed a lot of animals and own probably about 100 animals, so it's pretty good stuff. Instead of also subscribing, maybe check out some of my breeding products. Plenty of videos on it. Of course, you get up-to-date info on that. You get to see the first animals that are coming in before anyone else gets to see them. First dibs on the babies I get, or babies I produce. Discounts on merch. Just a bunch of cool stuff, man. I think that's all. Your name actually gets to be in the outro. The outro is going to be happening in about 15 seconds. Your name gets to be on it, so you get to be cool in every one of my videos at the very end of the video. That's about it, folks. I said 15 seconds, so we're going to wrap it up from here. I hope you guys have a great day. Let's roll that outro.